Mhm.
Live.
There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to our viewers on Facebook and YouTube. We are excited to finally be broadcasting live. A little bit of technical difficulties, but we got it now, and we are ready for a great conversation tonight. My name's Dr. Cameron Matthews. I'm one of the founders and co-director of the Tour for Diversity in Medicine. And I am joined by my very good friend, Dr. Levanani, and we are excited to bring you this second part of our Road to Residency series. We're really excited. We've been doing this. This is now our third year in a row, started during the pandemic, and it really felt it's a great opportunity to help you guys as graduating fourth years and maybe a few younger students as well, just have an awareness of what this whole residency application process is like. Last week we talked about ERAS and virtual interviewing. This week we're going to get a little bit more focused on you and how you should be telling your story. Just a little bit about our story though. Tour for Diversity in Medicine, we were actually founded out of SNMA, and
Hmm.
we're about 50 strong. There's medicine, pharmacy, and dentistry represented. And we are really here to help spread the word of our fields to students all across the country, and hopefully share our stories so that we can motivate more students to go into all of our fields. And we partner on this program with SNMA and LMSA every year, as well as other programming. And we're just really excited. Just to highlight now, we'll highlight again at the end. Next week, we have a whole series, and we'll flash up the dates of them finally, of workshops that are more specialty specific. So, what's it like to apply to medicine? Apply to residency in family medicine, in emergency medicine, like Dr. Anani. There's obviously a lot of particulars for each field. And so, almost every specialty will be represented in an hour-long panel of some great speakers. We have got people coming out the woodwork to help all of you students. So please take advantage of these, and emails will be sent out to all of the registered students. So registered meaning members of SNMA and LMSA, and registered for the mock interview program, the Road to Residency program. So registration closes on the 19th, this Friday. So please make sure you do that. If you are not a member of SNMA or LMSA, please sign up and you can still take part. But next week's workshops are reserved for members only. I am going to hand this over to Dr. Anani to kick us off and start talking about fine tuning your personal statement.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, we have 3 days. Personal statements apply to everybody, no matter what the specialty. Just like Dr. Matthews said, we have a lot of people in our program, in our wheelhouse. Pharmacy, dentistry. Want to give a shout out to our podiatry colleagues as well. I always joke, the mentor with the most Instagram followers is a podiatrist of all the Tour for Diversity mentors. So that is true. Again, my name is Levanani, and I practice emergency medicine. And I'm going to start off and kick off with what everyone, I'm sure, is the most excited about: personal statements. And it's probably what I do most as a mentor. We go through a lot of them. There's our mission again, as Dr. Matthews pointed out. And what I want to do now is point to a strong example of what someone thought was a personal statement here. So, can you go back one slide and then come back again? All right, then go back again. All right, thank you. So this is our standard example. If you've ever been on the tour, and to save time, I'm just going to read what it says in the background, and I'm going to tell you why there's a big X through it. So this was a personal statement someone wrote. Becoming physician is a greatness inspired to by many. As a farmer's son, I've wakened early and returned late from the fields after long days with my father. I've been able to experience uncertainties, challenges, and plain old hard work similar to that faced by a physician. But like the doctors in the hospitals and Dr. Smith in the labs, I can find happiness and satisfaction in helping people through medicine. Despite all the hardship doctors face, I want to help people every day. Practicing medicine is something worth the stress of long hours, and I finally understand what my father. I know now how he can wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and drive his green tractor until 7 p.m. Dirty green tractor, excuse me. So that reads like a beautiful statement, right? But it reads like a medical school personal statement. Everyone here, and hopefully everyone here, is applying to residency. That statement did not have anything about your specialty or anything else like that. And it just says you want to be a doctor. Reminder to everybody writing a personal statement for ERAS: You're graduating this year. You're going to be a doctor. You don't have to remind everybody of that. So what we're going to do
You
now
don't
is
have to convince me why you went into
exactly,
medicine anymore.
exactly. I got it. You're going to
I got
graduate.
it. Exactly.
So we're going to highlight the differences is between a medical school and residency personal statement. You're going to get some pro tips for the do's and the pro tips for the do nots. And Dr. Matthews is definitely going to highlight some of the do's and do nots. So medical school versus residency. Your statement should express your personality and style. This is a time for a lot of self-reflection, right? Nobody is going to have you in front of them pre-interview. This is the best example you're going to have to put yourself forward outside of your scores and everything else like that. This is what someone can read and say, huh, I do want to meet this person. So it should express yourself. You should have something that kind of points out who you are and what you believe in. Often, your personal statement should include a description of an influential experience or individual who inspired your career or some personal experiences. Most people usually throw this in their first paragraph, right? I'm going to be very generic here. If this strikes a nerve, I'm not aiming at anyone, but just very generic. Um, of course, the classic one can be, oh, my Meemaw was sick with cancer. I went into the hospital every day. I visited Meemaw, saw the nurses and the doctors, and that inspired me to go into oncology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That tends to be the generic one. Everyone tends to hit a lot. But again, you can talk about your influential experiences there or anything that happened that pushed you towards that specialty. You should, of course, in your personal statement, try to describe what you're looking for in a program. That way, the program knows, oh, yeah, they would be a great fit here. I'm glad I just read the last 3 paragraphs, and I'm glad that they want to come to a place like our program. What you don't want is to just be very generic, and they don't know if you really like them or not. And we'll get into that a little bit more. You want to define your future professional goals in general and within a specialty area. All right. So obviously, if someone were applying to emergency medicine, you want to have professional goals aligned with emergency medicine. If you are trying to cure melanoma and ban it from all of the world, emergency medicine probably isn't the best specialty for you. So if that's your goal, it's going to point out heavily. And of course, we want you to be general, so you're not trying to, again, solve everything at one time. And everybody, feel free to drop questions in the chat. We answer them all the time directly. Just like, will this PowerPoint be available to us after the presentation? Unfortunately, no, Kendall. This is personal property. So we want our intellectual property. So we won't share the slides. However, a recording of this video will be available and posted. So you can't have the slides, but you can have the PowerPoints and the video of us talking. So if you want to review in the future, you can put us on mute in double time, I guess. And then again, you want to point out what helps you stand out in your personal statement. There are some resources, AAMC's Career Medicine website. We want to point out UW School of Medicine had great information and brainstorming techniques for what to put into your personal statement. So we want to give them a shout out. And they also had like a good editing checklist, what you should look for back and forth. All right, next slide, please. All right, so some pro tips, some do's here. Again, specialty specific, interests, as well as skill sets and clinical experiences. So if you're going into emergency medicine and you did CPR on a plane, it's probably something good to put in a personal statement. All right, you're going into family and you've helped deliver a baby already, or you've helped your cousins and go to all of their doctor's appointments, you should probably put that in there. You're going into endocrine and some of your family members already have diabetes and you're already used to a sliding scale, that should be in there. Be as specific as you can be. Remember, you are writing this personal statement to people in that specialty. So you don't want to be too generic. Case in point, I always see OB, very popular specialty in the last couple of years. And it's just like, I want to affect women's health. Okay, how? Or I want to help deliver babies. Okay, how? Or the best one is I helped deliver my mom's baby. All right, but suddenly she got sick and she went to the hospital. Well, now you're applying to OBGYN. So you should be able to think back if this is so important and remember why she got sick. I helped deliver my mom's baby and she started to get sick. She went to the hospital and we found out that she had postpartum hemorrhage due to the blood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now you've like hit a topic. Someone knows you've reflected upon that specialty in detail.
And note the detail was about the mom and not the baby. I've actually
Yes.
read I've read statements like that. I'm like, do you want OB or peds? I don't know. Yes, it's
Classic example.
yeah.
Very classic example. Personal reflections demonstrate your values and your personal practice goals. Um, I tell people you don't have to have that in there, but if you're going to reflect on yourself, because it's a personal statement, you want to make sure it's clear, right? So your personal statement tends to be 3 to 4 paragraphs. Usually your intro, why you chose a specialty, a little bit about yourself. Second paragraph tends to be how you're in medical schooling, you graduated or you're moving towards that specialty. Third paragraph / fourth tends to be what you're looking for in the program and why you'd be great there. So when you're in those personal reflection areas, that's where you can demonstrate your hardcore values, right? So again, not picking on OB, but is it only because of your mother having postpartum hemorrhage that you want to go into OB? Is there anything else? Why is that important to you? People hemorrhage in a lot of other specialties. So this is the time you can start to reflect on yourself and say, I'm gravitating towards this, et cetera, et cetera. Specific training you seek in residency. So if you're aiming for something, international women's health, right? The program in Southern Dakota may not have a very good international program or a broad program. So you want to put that in your personal statement. Now that may limit you to South Dakota or Southern Dakota, but it can highlight you in other places. Great question in chat. For personal reflection, is it okay to talk about starting a family in the future or just keep it all about academic and professional related goals? So no one's allowed to legally ask you questions about your marriage status or family status. However, if that's important to you, it is fine to put that in there. Certain specialties can be hard to have families in. So if you put in there that you want to have a family and you've already reflected on how you're going to manage that family during residency, you can put that in there. But it can be a sticky road. Dr.
I,
Matthews?
I was going to say, Dr. Nani, if you think about it, if you think about the length of this statement, if you have about 3 or 4 paragraphs and you can't take a full 3 or 4 paragraphs to talk about why you want to be in a specific field, then we may need to have a conversation because, I mean, honestly, you should be able to describe this is the field that you're going to be practicing in. This is where you should have had enough experience, enough skills gained, enough mentoring, maybe some research where you can describe in a short statement why you think you're going to be a good obstetrician or a good family physician. It is not necessary for you to describe. I love the idea of reflecting your values and personal practice goals, yes, but it is not necessary for you to describe your big picture of who you want to be. This is about getting into residency. Okay.
Mhm.
Again, you don't have to defend that you want to be in medicine. You don't have to defend that you're a good person. You don't have to defend that you want to help people. And it may not necessarily be the best use of space, I'll say it like that, to talk about anything outside of medicine at this time. I think it could honestly take away from a larger argument that you could be making on your own behalf. That's all.
Very good point. Like I said, and if for some reason you gotta talk about family, I understand. But if it's not mandatory, you can leave it out. All right. Next point. And this point can also go with 2 points later. Describe maturity and growth. And thank you for the questions, Canary. So put more and we'll continue to respond. Maturity and growth, right? I hope no one applying to residency is exactly the same person they were when they started medical school. It shouldn't be true. So again, if you started medical school bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you wanted to do EM or OB or any other specialty, what has sustained you through that time? How have you grown? Why do you know you want to do it? How have you matured? What did you fail and stand up from? And so the maturity and growth can be a good place. You highlight some of those red flags if necessary. So talking about red flags, I usually recommend for red flags, one, if it's already discussed through like your dean's letter or somewhere else in there, you don't have to bring it up again. Don't remind somebody, of what happened because not everyone gets your full packet. However, if you think this is a place to really kind of nail down what happened, you can discuss it in general. So, not passing step one. If you killed it on step two, or you pass it the next time, and you have glowing letters everywhere else, you don't have to bring that in here because it's not a true part of your whole personal statement. However, if you want to use how you stood up and grew, got to the challenge, stepped up to the plate, and that's going to help you in the future, that's why you talk about your red flags. So it's not like an excuse palette. It's not somewhere you just
Yeah.
say, hey, by the way, I failed step one. It's no, I failed. I fell down. I stood up. This is how I stood up. This is why it never is going to happen again, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Matthews?
And I would avoid describing maybe some of those faux pas, not even mistakes, right? They're all learning experiences, but
Mm-hmm.
things that occurred that maybe you want to describe, I would avoid describing them in kind of declarative statements. I did this, I had this experience, as opposed to through this experience, I learned A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
Because of my difficulty with this exam, I picked up these skills, A, B, and C. Use them more as a way to connect yourself to a set of skills, a set of experiences that are going to benefit you during your residency. Same with any other experience. Never just say, I did this, I served on this committee, I worked with such and such. You want to use your experiences to describe who you are, to describe why you're going to be strong in residency. So those red flags can be referenced, but I agree with Dr. Anani, it doesn't need to be a full description. In fact, it shouldn't be, particularly because it's going to be elsewhere in your application.
Great. Kendall has a great question. Should personal statements be program specific or field specific? I recommend field specific. And then when
Mhm.
you're talking about what you want out of a program, you can highlight some specific things, and then programs will kind of get the note. Because again, your personal statement goes everywhere. So you
Mhm.
shouldn't be like, I really want to practice in New York at whatever hospital, because that's where I was born. And then that letter is going to New Orleans or Texas. There's nowhere near New York. So you don't want to get thrown out immediately. But field specific, I want to practice in this type of hospital with this type of residency program, then that's fine.
Urban, rural,
Yes.
this type of care. Yes, exactly.
Buzzwords, hit them hard.
Buzzwords. Yep.
The next point, I don't want to understate. Describe how you will benefit the program, not just what you hope to gain. All right.
Yep.
To pull the curtain back, the reason most programs used to, and hopefully it's used to, pay so much attention to scores is it was believed that scores were indicative of someone's chance passing the boards. Therefore, a program would select someone because they knew they'd pass the boards and not have a red stain on their ledger. Or it would be assumed they were really, really intelligent and move the program forward through research or something else like that. So if you can tell the person directly what you can do for them and not have them assume based off some 3-digit number from a test you took, that's probably the better way. All right. So I would be a huge benefit. I believe I would be a benefit to a program based off the leadership skills I gained while being part of SNMA and LMSA. I became a local leader or a national leader. I've gained these skills. I know Robert's rules of order. I'm not going to go that deep, but you can just highlight how you're going to help that program bring it up, right? So if someone's reading your personal statement, they can go, this person might be a good chief. This person might be a good research fellow. That's what you want to highlight in there for what you can benefit a program. It doesn't have to be a paragraph, but a strong sentence or two can really send that message across. And then finally, do not overemphasize your non-clinical experiences. If they push you a certain way, great, right? If you climbed Mount Everest, that is a great tactic. That's a great piece of non-clinical experience to put in your personal statement. But when you're talking about climbing Mount Everest, you better be talking about, ascendance disorders. You better be talking about the medicines you took to prevent different diagnoses. You better talk about how you had made the clinical decision to avoid dehydration, the food you took for calorie intake. Like, you can still rotate that back to clinical. But if you're just talking about how cold it was and how high up you climbed, you wasted some paragraphs in time. All right, next slide, please. All right, these logistics are more things to avoid. All right, and these ones we may spend a little more time on because they hurt us. They hurt us the most. Number one, avoid broad general discussions like research and health equity. It's the new buzzword nowadays. I'm reading a personal statement. I want to come to your program. I'm very interested in DEI and I plan on advancing health equity. By yourself? Like how? Like how are we doing this? Or, I plan on coming to your program, and before I graduate, I would have started a free clinic. Those are very hard to start. You have 3 to 4 years here. Do you have a game plan? How are you going to do this? And health equity is a very wide field. What do you want to do? Do you want to do women's health? Do you want to do kind of a racial diversity best equity? Anything along those lines. Try to be a little bit more specific, but again, don't try to solve all the world's problems immediately. Just kind of hit how you're going to tackle it. Again, we've already stated this and cannot reemphasize it more. Do not reuse your medical school personal statement. Don't even open it before you write your residency one. You're going to get trapped in using the same story, the same adjectives. You're going to be like, oh, I can cut out this paragraph and post it here. It's not going to flow. Just don't use it. Don't even open it. Just don't. Again, do not waste your space on explaining why you want to be a physician. You are going to be a physician. It's going to happen. You're about to graduate. You're now talking about why you want to be this type of physician. So make sure you hit that as hard as possible. Now, somebody out there watching, like me, may be like, well, Dr. Nani, I have to apply to 2 specialties this year. I bet you can use the same bones, but make sure you still change out things to be specific to that specialty. All right. Just because you're applying to different specialties doesn't mean you can do half the work. You have to do twice as much work now. So don't slack off there. That also goes to people applying to transitional programs. Yes, you still got to write a personal statement there. I don't know why. I didn't invent the rules. But you can have one there. And everyone knows if you're applying to a transitional year that it's a transitional year, right? So you don't have to be like, you don't have to hide the fact that you're going into radiology. They know that. So just make sure you kind of hit it on the head. Now, if you're applying to a prelim, you can again still be specific to that specialty and just say, hey, I'm just applying to this prelim for this 1 year. Do not rehash what is otherwise included in your application, all right? So do not put, I was chapter president of SNMA. I was chapter president of LMSA. I was student national president. Excuse me. There's no need to put that. So that's why you always have a drink when you're on live. So don't waste your time on that. Put it somewhere else and do what you need to do. Remember.
Or even remember the one tidbit while you clear your throat a little bit. Remember, the other thing is not to necessarily put everything in your personal statement, because you may want to leave some things to have a conversation about to bring up during your interview process, right? It's sometimes nice to have that little tidbit of information so that you can have something unique to discuss, maybe a experience that you didn't necessarily highlight during the application itself. So not only don't rehash things, think of not just your application, but the interview, the entire engagement as your application, and you're presenting your whole picture. So don't think of it as snapshots, but every piece that's connected.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Spell check and grammar check. Hit the button. Just because it's not underlined doesn't mean you shouldn't hit the button. I want that thing to pop up and say there are no grammar errors, because I have seen it and it's happened to me before. Spell check is on, but the little wavy line doesn't come up, or it just assumes I know that they shouldn't go there. And I hit the button for spell check and it's like, oh yeah, you got these 10 errors. Fix that. Hit the button. Not only hit the button, read it out loud. Okay. Sometimes spell check won't tell you that TO should have been TOO. But you need to look at it and read out loud and then remind yourself, I meant to say 2 as in as well there. And as well has 2 O's. There should be an O there. So just read out loud, make sure it makes sense. Another reason to read out loud, if you fall asleep reading it, I'm going to fall asleep reading it. So just make sure you get through it and you're reading it like, oh, this is interesting. I want this person to come here. And then ask others to review it. This is very important. You wrote it. You're going to be reading it. You're going to skip over some words. You're going to skip a paragraph, skip a sentence because you already think you know what it's going to say. Somebody else is going to read it and be like, they didn't need to say this, or I don't understand this. Or more importantly, the flow. A lot of times I see students write each paragraph separately. It's like, oh, I'm going to write this one paragraph. 2 weeks later, write this other one. 3 weeks later, write this other one. And to them, it makes sense. But to the reader, there is no flow. So that's why you have to give it to somebody else. All right, guys. And it's going to take multiple edits. If anyone has a personal statement done in one go round, I guarantee it's not a good personal statement. All right, next slide. All right. This was used on behalf of one of my mentees, and they said I can use it. So I've used it as a good example. I'm going to read it because I know somebody somewhere is not looking at the screen and just has its own voice, and that's fine. We're in 2022. This is the first edition. When I think of my future role in medicine, I envision being a physician that will face a broad spectrum of clinical scenarios instead of narrowing my focus on only a single specialty. Emergency medicine is the medical field that gives me the best opportunity to both serve a diverse range of patients and to address their concerns through hands-on procedures. The mystery of not knowing what patient will come through the door is an invigorating challenge that I would enjoy tackling on a day-to-day basis. Additionally, working in the emergency department includes interacting with individuals who are often caught up in the worst moments of their lives. I endeavor to be a positive force that can help to soothe patients through such vulnerable and traumatic situations. Most importantly, emergency medicine allows me to care for all people despite their socioeconomic status or whether they have insurance. As an inspiring emergency medicine physician, I aim to ensure that every patient admission will receive optimal care. All right, not bad. I read that. It kind of hit some high notes, but I had to give her some feedback. And some of the feedback I would give her again, and I'd give any one of you who wrote this is, I'm in emergency medicine. I know how good it is. I'm glad you recognize how good it is, but who are you? There is nothing personal in this personal statement. Like I can literally put this in anyone applying to emergency medicine paragraph right now, and it's not going to highlight much of anything. And it kind of just goes on and says emergency medicine is great. So it was specialty specific, right? There were some pros in there. They didn't say they wanted to be a doctor again, and they understand the specialty. I get that, but I still wanted a little bit more. Next slide. So this is 9 months later, after we really got into it. This is that same paragraph and what it evolved into. There's no better calling in life than helping your fellow human being when they are at their lowest. Growing up in New York, I was often exposed to the homeless and vulnerable populations of the city, some at their lowest points in life. As I grew older, I understood opportunities to engage the homeless through volunteer work. It was this early exposure and time spent that laid the foundation for my current career goals. After completing college, I spent the years between undergrad and medical school volunteering at a homeless shelter in Baltimore. It was here I met a true community advocate, a nephrologist who worked at the shelter. I personally saw the impact the physician can make on vulnerable lives. I worked with him for months on end and witnessed how he brought smiles and saved lives by providing nebulizers, medications, and personal medical advice. This allowed the residents of the shelter to have access to healthcare, much needed medical advice, and supplies to prevent them from deteriorating or becoming hospitalized. One day, when a patient presented with hypertensive urgency, he drove them to the emergency room. Although he was a physician, he was not equipped or trained to handle emergencies. It was then I realized I wanted to be the kind of physician that mastered resuscitation and could be counted on in an emergency, one that does not turn anyone away and works with the underprivileged. An emergency physician fit perfectly. Now, look at this. I know this person lived in New York and Baltimore, has worked with the homeless, took some time off in between undergrad and med school. I know they like the homeless. I know they like community service. I know they understand what it is to be an emergency medicine physician, and they still hit all those highlights of helping people at their low times and their high times. And they snuck in a medical condition and piece of pathology. And they didn't highlight it, but it's still in there, and you knew they understood it. So they made that diagnosis from that patient so long ago. So still lots of words and wordy, but look how much we now know about this person. I can't put this in anyone's personal statement opening paragraph because I know I didn't live in New York. So now, 9 months later, we had a better opening statement. Next slide. And I think it is time to pass it to Dr. Matthews to
I
highlight
love it.
resume versus CV.
Look at Dr. Anani. I love it. I love it. No, that was a great progression. I'm really glad that you showed everyone that. I've definitely Handed some students back that awfully redlined version. So don't take it personal. Take it as a learning process, right? And you're supposed to go through different versions. Before we jump to resumes, it looks like Opal has a question along the lines of not preaching to the choir, the specialty to the specialist. Are patient interaction stories a do or a don't? I'll start with that one, Dr. Nani, and then maybe you can go. I actually, it depends on what the story is and what it tells about you. Remember, you're not trying to prove, Opal, why you want to go into this residency. You're trying to prove why you are going to be a good blank physician, why you are going to be a helpful member of that residency, of that community, of that department, right? So if that patient interaction story somehow shows your willingness to lead, to be a member of a team, to go above and beyond, then yes, it's a great example. But if it's just to show that you work with patients, guess what? You all did that in medical school. So we need it to actually tell something about you and why you're going to be a good selection, not why you want to go there. You're making an argument here, and so that story needs to make the case.
I agree. As long as the story makes the case, that's fine. And the last example we just used, that technically was a patient interaction, right? There was a lot of fluff and background before it, but we
Mhm.
got to the highlight of hypertensive urgency, needed to go to the emergency room. And purely, I wanted to be the person to help that person at their lowest statement. So we understand that you guys don't know everything about the specialty, but there should be something you know about it that makes
Mhm.
you want to do it,
Mhm.
right? So whatever that thing is, that's
Mhm.
what you should aim for. So a lot of people are echoing and bigging up in E. Smith's challenge, and that's why we hope you guys came to this presentation. We want to
Yeah.
help you with these things. So we understand you have limited exposure. Anyone applying to derm, I did 0 derm rotations, not a one. But y'all opened that book and saw them rashes and said, I want to do this. So
Right.
why?
Why? Yes.
Exactly. Why? That's all you got to get to.
Right. But not why. Don't tell me why dermatology is so cool. Tell me why you are going to be good at it. That's the difference. So you don't need to know the full extent of the field. I get what you guys are saying, but you don't need to know the full breadth of the field because that's what you get in residency. Of course, you don't know that in medical school. Of course, you might have just had maybe 8 to 12 weeks in that, but there's some reason why you're choosing that field. Now, for those of you who are having difficulty in choosing between fields and you're doing that kind of dual application, there's still got to be a reason why you narrowed down the field of the more than 20 specialties to those two, to those couple. So have some conversations maybe. Now is a great time. I know it's challenging to find mentors, but now is a great time just to have a conversation with someone. It's not about establishing a long term relationship, but just ask them why they even chose the field. That's a great opening question just to understand more about what they're getting out of it and why they find it to be either a challenge or a benefit. How superficial or deep can that why be? Oh, Opal, I wish I could ask you which are you referring to. So the why about why you want to go into the field. You know what? It can be a lifestyle decision. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I'm going to make fun of Dr. Anani here, but I know emergency physicians choose emergency medicine because of shifts. You can't tell me anything other than the fact that they love to start work at one time and leave, and they don't have to take call like us family docs. I mean, that's not superficial. There's lifestyle decisions. There's a reason why different fields are the way they are. So I wouldn't necessarily think of it as superficial or deep. You don't need to feel like, the cure to all of Earth's ills is emergency medicine. It can be a reason that, that fits your lifestyle. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
I have a good kind of metaphor to use, and I did it because of the show ER. It's not the shifts. I know you did shifts.
Uh-huh.
Uh, to answer your question, Opal, and then the second question. All right, I'm not sure if you eat steak, but you can have a steak, rare, medium, or well done. It's hard to get a perfect medium, but each person has different palates for all three. So the person reading your statement may want it rare and superficial. Someone may want it super deep and well done. It's hard to figure out. But if your truth is you really like those colorful pictures, then I would want two things out of you. which is the picture that hooked you? Was it the sickle cell picture? The melanoma picture? Did you own your own microscope like everyone jokes about pathologists do? And then, all right, if you looked at one picture and decided I want to do this for the rest of my life, then that must have influenced everything else you did. Tell me about how pathology helped you on XY rotation. Did you actually go out and buy that stethoscope or microscope like everyone jokes? Tell us how those pictures continue to pull you to pathology. And when you start residency, what are you going to learn there, and what new pictures are you going to go find for yourself?
E. Smith, we know a couple. We are very close to a couple general and trauma surgeons, so we can definitely get you connected. But I would even ask you, I mean, those are amazing fields. Why are you even interested in it? I mean, that's even something that I don't think I think there's plenty of knowledge that you've gotten probably from even the limited time of not even talking to people in those fields as to why you're interested in them. You don't necessarily need hands-on mentorship to be able to define what we're describing, because again, remember, you're describing yourself and why you're going to
Mhm.
fit into that field. You're not describing the field, so you don't need examples. You don't need to talk about opal specific pieces of pathology and why you like it, but you need to discuss the fact that you like the challenge of problem solving, that you like looking in a scope and thinking about what it is, how that cell translates to a full human being, and how you're actually helping diagnose people. You're maybe at the edge of discovering solutions with regard to cancer. I know nothing about pathology, but I just wrote your statement. I mean, like, you know, I mean, there's you know enough about the field to again make a connection between why you are going to be good in it and what that field actually is about, because trust me, you wouldn't be choosing it, you wouldn't be applying in it if you didn't know something about it. So we don't need to go that deep into it, but we can definitely help out.
Mhm.
All right, guys, let's transition. We are coming up on the end of our hour as well, too. But if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go a little bit over because this is a pretty important space here as you are thinking about your application, as you are thinking about this transition in your very near future, in the next couple of years, of being somebody who has a resume to someone who has a curriculum vitae. This is a pretty major transition, um, and one that is going to follow you for the rest of your career. My CV, I literally have an updated version of it about every other month. And we'll talk about how frequently I want you guys updating. Yes, I do that, Dr. Anani. I update it every other month. But part of the purpose of this is your one document that you can hand to people like, bam, this is me, right? It should include all of your accomplishments, your publications, your presentations, and everything. And I'm now getting to the point where I got so many pages, I'm starting to filter out. Okay, I don't want this. I don't want this. This is too many years ago and everything. I'm starting to be selective of what's in there. The idea of pulling yourself out of that resume frame of mind, which is the one pager that you hand to somebody for a job, your curriculum vitae is supposed to describe your career thus far. And that's a very different, that's a very big distinction, right? You want to make sure that you're really describing your experiences, that you're using stronger words, that you're um, really honestly presenting the whole picture the way we said earlier that your application is supposed to. Your CV is supposed to do that as well. The biggest difficulty that most of us find, and the one when I'm looking at people's CVs now almost every day, what people get caught up in is how they actually organize it and how they format it. It can get pretty tricky for it to, I guess, be simple to read. As complicated as it can get over the years, you still want it to be simple and you still want people to be able to jump to certain parts of it. But we'll get into those details. You still want to think of your CV, as we said with the personal statement, as we said with the whole application, about telling a story, but of what you've already achieved. You want to actually emphasize your experiences. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to show you my own. Please don't laugh at me. But part of the idea is that you want to take your experiences and again relate them to where you want to go. So yes, I do tweak these a little bit every time I submit it. I do think about the words and what that actually means to a future employer, a future nonprofit board that I'm applying for, a future I don't know, honor that I'm applying for, or award or fellowship. I just got a new fellowship. I had to think about what do they actually want to know about me? And so part of that is using words that describe how what you've done is transferable. This experience that I've had with this committee, with this organization, with SNMA, with LMSA, these are experiences that I will be able to apply. The time management, the leadership skills, my ability to make quick decisions, to be problem solving, to work in a team. Those are all transferable skills, and there's usually a good set of verbs that you can choose to describe all of those. By the time you're getting to the point of applying to residency, it's really not that critical that you emphasize most of your college work anymore. You should do selective highlights. Obviously, what your major was, if you had some major leadership experiences and everything. But again, how does it relate? It's not just the length in your CV. How does it relate to where you're going in your residency, and particularly to your field? Not that you want to be a physician. So if it's applicable, then I would definitely continue to highlight it. Julia, I'll pause there. When applying to two different specialties, how should you tailor your CV without possibly appearing like you're not committed to one specialty? Could this have an impact on receiving interviews? Yes, it could. So you don't want to necessarily uh, deny the fact that you've had kind of multiple experiences, but trust me, it is an eyebrow raise when I see, for instance, students applying to one field, but yet all their research has been in another. Or applying to one field and they've only been involved with committees, or they've had mentors from certain departments and everything. So again, because it's supposed to tell a story, you want to make sure that story makes sense for where you're trying to go. So whether that's information maybe that you just want to de-emphasize by changing the wording, maybe not including the mentoring, maybe um, leaving certain organizations off, it's not necessary. It's an appropriate omission because it's not necessarily proving your case, while it may in your other specialty. So it's definitely, I would say, in a case by case scenario, it'd be helpful to have a mentor review it and make sure that it's actually painting the right picture, that it's a holistic picture. Go ahead, Dr. Anani.
And luckily for you, Julia, medical student to residency, anything you do is basically applicable. So you don't have to like go through and delete too much stuff. The one thing I would make sure is not on there, because I see some people copying from the internet. A lot of CVs have that purpose up top, and applying to certain specialty. Don't put the actual specialty, like applying to general surgery and then hand it to a pathology person or booth or something like that. Just have it generic, applying it to secure a residency position in the match. But everything else underneath it should be fine.
Exactly. All right, so general template. You'll see on here a bunch of different bullet points. This is for your CV again. A lot of this you guys may not be able to fill in. Feel free, guys, also take out your phones, snap a picture of this, or you can even Google this. There's templates everywhere. There's ones you can fill in. And by the time you get to different university levels, there's going to be required templates that you're going to have to change this around to fit. I am so happy I'm not in that space. I'm not in academia, but there's if you see here, this is telling literally the bullet by bullet description of what your career is. So you guys aren't going to have all of these bullets yet, but you should start to organize how you're going to present yourself. So what you've done in this sort of way. So if certain sections aren't applicable yet, they won't be there. But over time, as you start to pull this together and as you start to continue to update and have different versions of it over time, you'll be able to fill this in. But if you're, I mean, especially over the past couple of years, I know many of you have written for blogs, written articles, maybe even done some specific service. You want to be careful, of course, particularly if you did anything, particularly in the kind of racial justice space. What sort of programs are you applying to? Are they actually thinking that that might be, something they really value in their residents, or do you think you're applying to a program? I hate to say it, somewhere that you may be nervous about how they actually take that bit of information, that maybe you did something with white coats for Black lives. My argument is, if you did something for white coats for Black lives, you were pretty invested in that. If there's a program out there that doesn't like that, then you probably don't want to be at that program anyway. So my argument is to keep it in there. But maybe you want to really be at the program. Maybe that's some training ground that you really feel invested in. Maybe, unfortunately, that might be your one option. So you might want to think about whether or not information like that. That's usually the biggest example of what to omit, just because that might have some influence to someone reviewing it. All right. A couple of different logistics. Definitely consider multiple versions. Although, again, as you're submitting this through ERAS, you do have a little bit of a need to tailor it because you won't have multiple versions to be able to do. But over time, you are going to not be submitting it through a big uh, automated system like ERAS. So over time, you will be able to flex and really tailor this in different ways. Make sure whatever is on your LinkedIn profile, and I hope every single one of you has one. Whatever is on your LinkedIn profile, make sure it is exactly what's being reflected on your CV and vice versa. If there's information in one and not the other, that's fine. But don't have descriptions of a certain job that's not consistent with your CV and vice versa. Um, Update it as regularly as you can. Like I said, and this is me, I am OCD. I have named month versions of it, and I go every month or so, every time I get a new position, or every time I literally think to myself, that would be a good bullet point on my CV. And I write myself a little note, and then I go home and update it. Yes, I'm OCD, but this is the way that I can actually have this phenomenal document. Make sure you review it and get feedback. Again, like your personal statement, no one else, well, you yourself aren't going to be able to really look at this and understand the big picture because you lived it and you need someone else to give you that kind of feedback. Make sure you're proofreading, make sure you're using up the space on the page as well too. Don't go too crazy using those templates like from Word and all these different things. Just make it simple. But I use a lot of italicizing and bolding for emphasis. So I will highlight for certain jobs that I've had notable achievements, and I'll do a special set of bullet points and things like that because I actually want to call those pieces out. There's a great template on AAMC's website. But again, I'm giving you a little bit of a picture of where you want to go with it right now. You're going to keep it very simple. And I want to make sure you guys at least start to emphasize the critical pieces, which of course are your education, your research, and your work experience. So, oh, good. Thank goodness this is way too small. So this is my CV, guys, and I have had a lot of experience, guys. I'm way more advanced than thankfully where I was again when I applied for residency. But this is just the first page. You can see I start off with my name. It's not lighter. That's just more in the header and footer when I copied and pasted it. But notice I don't start. Dr. and I don't start with a purpose and everything. This is my general CV. This is what I give everyone but that's also where the point I am in my career. When I'm applying for a job, I don't need to tell you the purpose. I'm applying for a job. That's the purpose. Like that's how I think of it. So my job currently, I work with City Black Health, then before that, Department of Veterans Affairs. But you should see, look at all these bullet points, all these different co-chair positions, all of my different membership of committees and all this different stuff. I literally was keeping lists of this, and then I got descriptive with it. I'm very big on using numbers and actual facts of what I achieved or who I was working with or budgets that I had or committees that I testified in front of, all of that, because it describes what I did in that role. Then I zoomed in. Oh, trust me, there were many more pages of experience. I'm giving you cutting and pasted. Don't shake your head, love.
You a boss. Every time I say it, my boss is a boss. I'm not lying. This is ridiculous. Go ahead.
Yeah, so skip ahead several pages. Then this is my education. So I have gone back and forth. Do I start with the most recent upfront and go backwards? Or so mine kind of jumps back and forth. I admit I would suggest everyone be consistent about the timeline of whether you're gonna start earlier to later or later to earlier. All of my professional training, including fellowships that I've had, executive courses that I've taken, virtual or not. That's all part of your education. So you can see I highlighted my chief resident year separate from my residency, my National Academy of Medicine fellowship, and then the projects that I actually worked on so that they actually see, oh, you didn't just have a fellowship, you actually did something with it. Skipping ahead several pages, my licensures, my professional involvement. So I'm on boards, I have other fellowships, I work with nonprofits. Then I separate out my professional organizations from my community organizations. So, yes, I still have SNMA on here. Yes, I have that. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta. Yes, I have the tour on here. I even put websites on here specifically for the tour because I know a lot of people out there don't know what it is. I actually include the tour website on there. And because they're not going to be as familiar with it, it's not as clean cut as SNMA. Yeah, that's about it. From there, awards, research, what I used to do. So you can see I'm bolding titles. What was my other example from this? Oh, italicize and everything, what my role was and everything. This is pretty cookie cutter. Then I got into kind of publications, profiles that I had. So even though it's not something I wrote, I still think it's a big deal that someone else wrote something about me. So I actually include that in my CV, and I put those on my LinkedIn page as well too, so they can go back and forth. And then different publications that I have where I bold my name so they can see. I haven't gotten too much first authorship, but it's pretty cool. And then on my presentations, posters, abstract. I don't know why you have me showing all this love. This is ridiculous. Anyway, the
I have two questions.
what?
One, so the audience can know what an achieved physician looks like. How
Mhm.
many pages is your CV, Dr. Matthews?
Right now it's 12 pages.
12 pages.
Mhm.
Mine is 3, y'all, but hers is 12 pages. Number 2, would you recommend in today's day and age a media portion, like if they were on
Oh yes.
CNN or
Oh,
MSNBC?
hands down. Hands down, you have to. That's a big deal. It means you're a bit well spoken, you understand topics, you're an advocate. I would definitely recommend media. So, not just written media, but also, yes, verbal podcasts, please. Ooh, love. We got to put all our podcasts on there. Any podcast, you should definitely have that on there as well, too. Ernst, great question. How do I highlight attending ACP and AAFP National Conference? I would put that probably, where can you put that, love? I would think kind of, I consider that as an educational experience.
I've seen people put in 2 places.
Yeah.
Education, because they want to get CME, or some people have just a general conference section. And I've seen
Hmm.
it for people who are shorter pages like mine to help extend it. It just says
Hmm.
conferences and a bunch of conferences they've gone to lately. And if
Hmm.
they presented there, obviously those presentations are in the presentation section. But it's to highlight like, hey, I go to these conferences. So you can just have a straight up section.
Yeah. So you're saying on your CV, he's asking specifically on the application. Is there a section that you would include? I would just keep it on the CV. I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily put it in other places.
Yeah.
Kenya, would you recommend to include end dates for extracurricular activities? Um, I would if you're using it to show longevity of your involvement. If you've only done extracurricular activities 6 months here, 9 months there, it would probably not be make the case. It probably not be that helpful.
Mhm.
So hopefully those are kind of sustained extracurricular activities where you can even describe what you've done. Um, I tend to put end dates just because it shows kind of the progression of a lot of the work that I've done. I think in the application part, you are expected to put some end dates. So, how you do it on your CV depends on whether or not it's painting a positive picture for you.
And I want to highlight that what Dr. Matthews just said. A lot of people are wondering, why do I need a CV? I don't need a CV. It's, I mean, theoretically true. You have to go on the application and put it in. But if you have your CV crafted, trust me, you just sit down on when ERAS opens and you just type and with no headache and you're done.
Mhm.
If you don't have a CV done, you are sitting there scratching your brain.
Yep.
Hey, when do we help them kids on that project again? Oh, October. And then you're just doing that and it does not work. You're going to forget something.
Yep.
It's not going to be highlighted well.
Yep.
So I thoroughly recommend crafting a CV.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to Opal's questions because we answer
Mhm.
all questions on the
I
tour.
think we got all oh, no, she did
She
have
had some
one.
new ones. What if a lot of my why comes from wanting to be an educator in that field or wanting to diversify
Yeah,
the field?
yeah.
So that is fine. That is good. But there are educators in pathology right now. So why do you want to be an
Wow.
educator in pathology?
Yeah.
And if you're going to diversify
Mhm,
the pathology education field, what are you doing to diversify that? Right?
mhm.
A lot of people think just being diverse is good enough. Do you plan on bringing in more people? Do you plan on working on a specific disease that pathology can highlight? Again,
Mhm,
sickle cell is a really big one. Any
mhm,
cancer highlights that you want to do?
mhm.
What are you going to do to diversify that field, or are you just going to be a person of color in that field?
Right.
Because a lot of people talk about that and then drop the ball, and they really
Mhm.
just want to be a person of color in that
Right.
field.
But let's go back to that. Opal, we keep saying why, but the question is not why do you want to be in the field? The question is why are you going to be good in that field? Those are two different things. So don't tell me about that you want to teach pathology. Tell me that you're going to be a good teacher in pathology because of blank. Those are two different arguments.
Excellent. And yes, E. Smith, you can easily translate your military air career into the OR.
Oh yeah.
That
Oh
sounds
my
like the
gosh.
beginning of a great personal statement to
Done.
me. Yeah,
That's pages of
yeah.
yes, that is
We were on the
hands down.
helicopter. I
Yes.
stabilized the patient with the gunshot wound. We wheeled him to the OR and the door was closed in front of me. I was
Yep.
unable to see and I wanted to know what happened behind that door. So I want to go into the OR and now have the last phase. Boom,
Oh
personal
my
statement.
gosh, E. Smith, you don't need a mentor in trauma surgery. You did trauma surgery. I mean,
hmm
like, you've already done it. You have experience, and you want to take it to the next level. So, yeah,
Exactly.
you have a great statement coming.
Where to
All
start
right.
if you truly don't
She's
have anything
taking notes.
interesting to
Oh,
say?
wait. Opal has one more question. There we go.
Yep.
Any advice on where to start if you truly don't have anything interesting to say? Oh, Opal, you will have something interesting to say. You are interested in pathology. I can already tell you're interested in, obviously, number one, going into a field where, number one, not a lot of people like us go into, where not a lot of people go into, period.
Yeah.
Okay. There is we can help you with that. I know writing, you're right. Writer's block, writing anxiety is very true. That's why we talk about practicing. That's why we talk about writing multiple different versions. That's why we say
hmm
have a conversation and maybe map it out verbally so we can get over this like being in front of a screen and just start talking with somebody. Start sitting with a friend and describing why you want to go into this field. And then maybe just have them start taking some notes. Start without the page in front of you. But you definitely will have something interesting to say. I mean, there is absolutely no that you should not have fear, especially choosing a field like pathology, where so few of us go into it. The fact that
hmm
you've chosen it alone is interesting enough in my mind. It really is.
Cosign. That's it. So I gotta say, what if it is a fellowship that is really catching my eye?
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to go through residency to get the fellowship. So
Mhm.
if you want to be a cardiac heart failure specialist, I mean, you got
Mhm.
to do general cardiology and then you go into heart failure. So
Mhm.
highlight that. Now,
Mhm.
when you do highlight that, again, programs that have that fellowship are going to open their eyes. They're going to know where
Mhm.
you want to go. So now I wouldn't
Mhm.
make it all about the general
Yeah.
fellowship,
There
but
we go.
there's nothing wrong with highlighting where you're going to go. We want to
Mhm.
know your goals and how we're going to help you get there.
Mhm.
So great question, Ernest.
Mm. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for bearing with us with the delay at the beginning. Thanks for hanging out with us a little bit later. Please definitely connect with us. Tweet us, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook. We are everywhere. We're going to have videos not only of tonight, last week's workshops, but also next week's, our different specialty workshops. So please take a picture of us, follow us, and definitely stay connected to us. And here we go. I think this has been, no, it hasn't been been fully updated, but the one that will be emailed out to the registered students will with links. These are the webinars next week by specialty, the different dates. I told you we got a bunch of them, and we even have more links included than we have filled out here. And there they are by date, just switching it around. So Sunday we'll start with anesthesia. Our good friend Dr. Stephen Bradley is going to be hosting that one from the Black Doctors podcast. And then we'll just go throughout the week. I got to highlight my family medicine one next Wednesday, Dr. Inani's next Thursday with emergency medicine. We are both hosting our webinars next week, and we can definitely be available to talk to any of you. So you'll get this through your SNMA liaisons or even directly from me if you are already registered by email. But thank you all so much for joining us. And good luck with this residency application process. You guys are going to be great. Julia, you register with SNMA or LMSA. They have forwarded out through chapter presidents, and you should get that information if you are a member. If not, definitely try to sign up.
Yep. And Kenya, really quick, you put it at the end, usually quick bullet points or blurbs. It should not be super long. People want to know about you, but you don't need to put more than like 3 to 5 bullet points of personal interest.
Yeah.
And hi, Sabrina. HU, you know we everywhere.
All right, guys, we're going to close it out there. Thank you all for joining us, and good luck.
All right.